Thank you for joining us. We'll be recording this meeting. This is our second meeting with the TOD and rail station area stakeholders. I'm Ella Gleason. I am a Planner 1 with Adams County, and I am joined by a host of other Adams County staff. As a reminder, we're going over several code amendments to the Adams County Development Standards and Regulations, which have been requested by the Board of County Commissioners. As a reminder, these proposed code amendments will apply to unincorporated Adams County, and proposed overlays will apply specifically to sub-area plan boundaries. So if you have any questions during the meeting, please feel free to drop those in the chat, or if you would prefer, you can email your comments and questions to Layla Bajalan at the email address on this slide. We're also going to include some polls throughout the meeting to get your feel for some of the regulations, and then we'll also have an opportunity for Q&A at the end of this presentation. So again, this is our second public outreach meeting. We had the first one last month where we introduced some of these concepts, and we're excited to present some drafts tonight. So at a study session with the Board of County Commissioners on May 11th, staff was given the direction to implement the vision of our long-range plans by creating zoning overlays for the plan boundaries. The 4 plans we're looking to include are the Welby Plan, the Federal Boulevard Framework Plan, the TOD and Rail Station Area Planning Guidelines, and the Clear Creek Valley TOD Plan. We were also given the direction to change the use by right allowances of outdoor storage in the Industrial 2 and Industrial 3 zone districts, to create a mixed-use zone district, to add tiny home villages and safe parking regulations as new uses within the county's development standards, and finally, to empower the comp plan and criteria of approval for land use cases. So many of these efforts are priorities to the Board of County Commissioners, and we were actually granted an implementation planner, Carl Onsager, who is with us tonight, to help implement all these proposed amendments. Staff will be adding compliance with the comprehensive plan as a criterion of approval to many of our land use cases. Currently, the county is working on advancing Adams, which is an update to the 2012 Imagine Adams comp plan that would provide a vision for development looking into 2040. The adoption of this plan will be in early 2022. Compliance with this document will ensure that development is compliant with the 2040 vision for Adams County. Adding in this criteria also ensures that our long-range plans are being considered and development is compliant with their specific visions. So the county will be pursuing code amendments to change the permitted allowances of outdoor storage in the Industrial 2 and Industrial 3 zone districts. Currently, the I2 and I3 zone districts allow for outdoor storage in excess of 100% of the building area by right if it does not exceed 80% of the lot or 10 acres, whichever is less. And if it does exceed that amount, a conditional use permit is currently required. So staff is recommending the 80% threshold should be reduced in the I2 and I3 zone districts per direction of the county commissioners. In the I2 district, outdoor storage would be permitted as a use by right if it is less than 25% of the entire lot or less than 3 acres. For I3 zone districts, outdoor storage would be permitted as a use by right if it does not exceed 50% of the entire lot or less than 6 acres. In both zone districts, outdoor storage in excess of 100% of the building area would still be allowed with a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit requires 2 public hearings. It requires the use be compatible with the area and with these regulations. It would require compatibility with the comp plan and any sub-area plans, and a neighborhood meeting would be required. So we are going to do a quick poll to check in with you all on these threshold numbers. We would love to hear from you, whether you think that these new thresholds feel too strict, not strict enough, or just right. So please take a moment to answer the poll on your screen if you'd like. All right, thank you for those who responded. So in addition to the allowances, staff is also proposing to modify the definition of outdoor storage. As you can see, this is mostly to simplify the definition as it is quite lengthy and confusing. This new definition also clarifies that any of these things kept outdoors for more than 72 hours is considered outdoor storage. So we did add a temporal element to the definition. Next, we will be adding a mixed-use zone district. So as Layla mentioned in the last meeting, the creation of a mixed-use zone district was called for by the 2012 Imagine Adams Comprehensive Plan and many of our sub-area plans. Additionally, the county does not allow for mixed use by right currently. In 2020, we added mixed use as a use in the development standards that required a conditional use permit and is only conditionally allowed in our C5 zone district. So this new mixed use zone district will not only allow mixed use by right, but it will also create flexibility in our approach to land uses and enhance the character of Adams County's commercial corridors. Only properties that front an arterial or collector road will be eligible to rezone to the mid-use zone district in order to protect the character of residential neighborhoods. Additionally, there will be reduced setbacks and parking in these zone districts to create a more vibrant street front that is welcoming and safe for pedestrians. Many of the standards will mirror the C5 zone district while allowing for a greater variety of uses. A site plan approval will be required and can run concurrently with the rezoning of a property. So next, as we shared last time, we were given direction to pursue the creation of tiny home villages as a use in our development standards. This would provide flexibility in both building form and site design requirements for providers of transitional housing for people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of being homeless. This use would be allowed with a conditional use permit in residential zone districts. Again, a conditional use permit requires 2 public hearings, that it be compatible with the area and the adoption of these regulations, that it's compatible with the comprehensive plan and applicable sub-area plans, and a neighborhood meeting would be required. So far, some of the proposed regulations we have, the minimum lot size would be 1/2 an acre with density at 1 home per 2,100 square feet. That's about a minimum of 10 tiny homes. A responsible agent would be required. This would be someone to both maintain and monitor the site. Parking would be provided on site. Common facilities would be provided, such as showers, kitchens, bathrooms. No outdoor storage would be allowed, but private storage is provided. So a local example of this picture shows the beloved tiny home village in Denver, and these are becoming more popular across the country, and they have been really helpful in helping people take that next step in finding more permanent forms of housing. So we are going to do another poll. We would love to hear what you think the most important considerations will be as we are writing these regulations for tiny home villages. So you should have that poll on your screen. Just take a few seconds to fill that out if you would like. All right, thank you for participating. So another use that we will be adding to our development standards under direction of the commissioners is safe parking sites. We know that many of our houseless neighbors are sheltering in their cars, and we want to provide a safe place for them to do so. This use would be regulated to provide safe sites at existing commercial and institutional uses that are compatible with these activities. It would be considered an accessory use to existing institutional and commercial uses and would be permitted through the administrative review process. This would require a site plan and a site management plan from the responsible agent who will be overseeing the site, and it will require a community meeting. A few of the proposed regulations, we have a minimum lot size of 1 acre. Parking would only be on approved surfaces. We would require setbacks to adjacent residential uses to make sure that there are appropriate distances from those adjacent residential uses. We are proposing hours of operations to be between 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. with quiet hours between 10 and 7. And hygiene and waste facilities would be provided by that responsible agent. So again, we would love to pull you all and see what you think the most important considerations will be in regulating safe parking sites. And you can make multiple selections. You don't have to just pick one on the poll. All right, thank you. So moving on to overlay districts. As I mentioned, we are adding 4 new overlay districts. We'll just be speaking to one tonight. As a reminder, overlay districts are an additional level of requirement to the underlying zone district. So for example, if a property is zoned I1 and is within the TOD overlay, it would be subject to both the I1 zoning and the regulations of the TOD overlay. If there are more than one overlays present, all would apply. These overlays help to apply specific standards to an area, and in this case, will provide the opportunity for incentives and will guide development that is in line with our sub-area plans. So these overlays are not countywide, and they are specific to the plan area. All right, so staff is recommending a new TOD overlay to implement both the TOD and rail station planning guidelines and the Clear Creek Valley TOD plan. These plans were both adopted in 2007 and 2009, respectively, and provide guidance for planning considerations for our 6 station areas within and near unincorporated Adams County. We know that development typically follows when transit is introduced to an area, and our intent is to implement these standards we have already adopted through an overlay district. For those of you that may not know, TOD stands for Transit-Oriented Development. It is a planning approach that calls for high-density, mixed-use business, residential neighborhood centers to be clustered around transit stations and corridors. So here you can see the location of each of our 6 transit stations in and near unincorporated Adams. This overlay would apply to properties that are within a half-mile distance from each transit station. So these are highlighted by the buffer on the map. That's the blue circle around each of the transit stations. And this chart shows the zoning characteristics of the properties within both unincorporated Adams that also fall within the half-mile station buffer area. So as you can see, the majority of holdings within station areas are zoned residential and PUD. There is also a significant amount of industrial zone land as far as land area goes. We have also adopted a TOD zone district previously. However, no properties have been rezoned to TOD so far. The TOD overlay implements many similar standards, as you can see in this chart. However, we want to be very clear that this is not a rezoning to TOD. Properties will maintain their zoning in addition to the TOD overlay standards. There are a few differences to note. Outdoor storage would still be allowed in the TOD overlay, and increased height or density would only be allowed through an incentives program with the county. So we're going to take one last poll on this overlay. And again, just wanting to gauge what you all think will be important for we're calling it the TODO, the Transit-Oriented Development Overlay, as we put that together. And again, you can choose more than one selection if you would like. All right, thank you so much. So this does conclude our overview of our draft amendments. We will have physical copies of these drafts on our website in early August. You will be able to access them on the link provided here. We'll also drop that link in the chat. Once we have received and incorporated public comments, we will host a study session with the Board of County Commissioners in late August. Then we will send these drafts to all of our relevant referral agencies for comment. Tentatively, these drafts will go before the Planning Commission in October and to the Board of County Commissioners in November. We do encourage you to stay involved in this process and continue to provide your feedback. You can provide comments, questions, or concerns to Layla at the email address provided here. And if you're interested in the other overlays being proposed in other parts of the county, please join us for our countywide update meeting this Thursday, July 29th at 6 p.m., which will also be hosted on Zoom. So again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we're going to take some time to answer some of your questions.
Don't everyone rush to ask us questions at once. You can write them in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. Let's see, we've got our first question. Can you show the TOD overlay map again? We also had a question from another meeting this evening. I think we're going to put these, we're going to have a better map and put these on our website just to show exactly which properties are within that overlay, or not overlay yet, but within that half-mile buffer. So as you can see, we have 6 station areas that have unincorporated properties within that half-mile buffer. And so the unincorporated properties within a half-mile of those station areas would be the ones that we're talking about here tonight. Another question, how many zones can be given to residential within the half-mile buffer? I'm not sure I understand the question. So we're not changing the zone district. We're just adding, we're adding an overlay that would be applied to all of those existing zone districts. Is there someone else on our team that would have a better answer to that question? Seeing none. I did see someone had their hand up. If I can get my, someone have their hand up. Okay.
So as far as the residential goes, I can just speak to, so there are parcel zones anywhere from R1, R2, R3, and R4 within that half-mile buffer. And I think there is a thought, and maybe it comes in this current review of code, or maybe in a phase 2 of expanding some potential mixed use to include a commercial and residential component, potentially in maybe the commercial zones. So a potential expansion of those residential uses, but we'll see what shape that actually takes. But there are a range of residential uses within that half-mile buffer existing. And those would stay in their existing zoning category, even with the overlay.
All right. And then so I guess the next question is that to rezone to TOD, the county would require incentives. So I think that that's kind of 2 different questions. There's currently a transit-oriented development zone district that we have in our regulations, but no one actually has rezoned to that. So this overlay zoning overlay would allow for us to have different types of restrictions on outdoor storage and design elements and things like that, but also potentially allowing for incentives in density and height. And I think that's something that maybe our our director, Jenny, might be able to speak to a little bit more.
Sure, on incentives, so sort of complementary, I guess, to this work, economic development team is working on an incentive strategy update. Previously, the county primarily has tied incentives directly to providing jobs, and instead we're trying to take a much broader sort of strategic view that, in fact, we're incentivizing things that are lining up with larger strategic development goals. So that will be forthcoming later this year, but is sort of separate from the zoning conversation per se. The incentives that could be provided from a zoning perspective, such as density bonuses, et cetera, we can offer. They in and of themselves may not be sufficient to drive the type of development that we're hoping for. So we see it as sort of a multi-layered approach. Does that answer that?
All right, I think it does. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Let's see. Does rezoning to transit-oriented development increase the RTD tax homeowners pay? Not that I know of. We don't regulate the RTD taxes, so I don't know if someone else who knows better.
Yeah, that's correct. That's part of the mill levy assessment, and it isn't anything we would adjust or set. So I think I'll go ahead and take a stab at the question. So for incentives on height and high density housing, would we incentivize developers to build high-rise housing? No, really all that we're talking about is that common practice in many TOD areas is to allow a density or height bonus for developers that are willing to do part or completely dedicated affordable units. That is something that we'll certainly take a closer look at. However, the allowable density already with the TOD overlay is probably at a sufficient level. From experience at Westminster Station, where they could build 5 to 8 stories, construction tended to stop at 5 stories anyway, just based on construction type and associated costs. So while we will look at providing those bonuses, we're just not convinced that they will actually make a significant difference in the development patterns yet. That may change over time.
So I see the question just came in of the 0.5 mile radius. So that is a radius, first of all, established in the transit-oriented development zone. And staff felt that it was appropriate to maintain that half-mile buffer for the overlay as well. Also in transit development, a quarter mile is often the preferred buffer for bus stops and sort of lower level of transit, whereas a half mile is deemed an appropriate area around a high quality transit station, such as light rail or commercial or commuter rail, such as we have with the N line and the G line. So that's where the half mile comes in, is kind of best practice for what people are willing to walk to in a transit-oriented development pattern.
All right, any other questions? Leila, if you'd be so kind, can you put that link in the chat again for people to keep up with this? These regulation amendments, to find the drafts we'll be posting later this week or early next week at the latest. Please make sure you reach out to Leila if you have any comments or questions on these, and if you want to stay involved and did not get on our mailing list, please put in your email here so we can keep you updated. The other question we got just now on your survey, I did not see an answer for neighborhood safety concerns. I would speculate it would be number 1. I think we had something to that effect. I don't think it was specifically neighborhood safety. I think it said, I have to go back and see what it said. One moment. It said safety concerns, so I didn't specifically say neighborhood safety, but I think, I mean, I get what you're talking about. And definitely noted that's something that we're definitely keeping an eye on and very sensitive to. We're working with our homelessness liaison and Paulo's team to make sure that we're finding the right balance there. We know this is a very important but sensitive subject, so we're trying to find a good balance for both the neighborhood but also providing services that are needed. And I'll also mention the initial outreach we did for these online meetings. We sent 15,000 paper invitations in the mail to property owners and residents within all of our overlay areas. So we were only really able to do that one time because it does get cost prohibitive for the county to do that many times. So it really helps for us to keep you in the loop if you provide your email address. Because I'm not really sure if we'll be able to have budget for another mailing like that. So it was very good to get that outreach though in the very beginning and get people who are interested. So thank you for attending tonight. All right, well, I'm going to end the recording at this time. We will stick around a little bit. If you have any remaining questions, you can type them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll try to answer those. But otherwise, please reach out to Leila and we look forward to working with you moving forward.